Are you ready? Stand by.
Welcome to the Three Gun Show, episode 93. I'm your host, Dave Hartman, coming at you once again from Omaha, Nebraska. This week on the podcast, we have Jason Hince, my host for most of my time in Omaha, which has turned out to be quite a bit. Jason started shooting a three gun in 2014 and has made a rapid progression in the sport, thanks in part to some great mentors along the way that he'll tell you about, and a commitment to practice and travel for the sport in a serious manner. As usual, if you have any comments or feedback, you can email me at dave@threegunshow.com or just leave a comment on the episode at the website. Links to everything that we discuss, including some fun pictures from the good times in Omaha, can be found at threegunshow.com/episode 93, or you can just tap the album art on your smartphone and it will take you right there. Now, please join me in welcoming the show, Jason Hince. Jason, welcome to the show.
Hi, Dave. Welcome to Omaha. And I'd like to keep you here a little bit longer. I don't think 2 weeks has been long enough for you.
You know, of all places I could get broke down in, this is a pretty good place to do it. Because, you know, for one, big one, obviously, you know, you're here. You invited me to come out to shoot some pheasants, shoot a three-gun match, and then do a couple practice sessions in between.
Yep.
And because my truck broke down, now the second time.
Twice, same
problem.
Yeah.
I've got the opportunity to do a couple more practice sessions and, you know, more shooting than I had anticipated. So it's actually been the
first question. What did you think of our practice versus practicing around the country with other people?
Well, it was definitely good. So there's a lot more bugs on your range.
Like insects?
Yes.
Yeah, your ankle blew up like a tick there.
Yeah, my ankle got blown up by, like I got stung by a bee or something like that. I've got chigger holes all over my legs, which that's what you guys told me they're called. I hope that's right.
Yeah.
And
better Google that.
Yeah. But I've got to find some cortisone or something like that.
Yeah.
I got eaten up on your range.
So the moral is get your shots, inoculations before you come to Omaha.
Yeah. Get your Zika virus shots, your malaria shots before you go to Omaha.
And it's harvest season, so you can't breathe.
That's right.
I mean, there's enough soybean dust in the air right now to make sure that you can't see either. So.
And even my dog is sneezing.
Is he?
Oh, yeah.
Parker.
Yeah, he's walking around sneezing and stuff and sniffing the air and everything. So.
Well, you have to be tough stock to shoot it and live here in Nebraska, Dave, but we're glad you came.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. This is a lot of fun. We've had some good times on the range over like the last couple weeks.
Yeah.
And you just taught me how to load 9mm and 223.
Yeah.
And I can imagine, you know, half the audience is groaning and slamming their steering wheel right now because they're like, come on, everybody knows that. But
Not everybody.
That was my first experience. I went to a reloading class a long time ago that basically they talked about like the dimensions of the cartridge and everything, but it was more based for like long range shooting, like silhouette type stuff.
Sure.
And so this was cool to be able to do it on like a Dillon 1050, like a progressive type thing. It's a lot of fun. I actually zoned out for a while there.
Well, you're a whole new man and you looked happy when
you
were doing it. I've told Lance Stingler this a couple times. I can't explain it, but it just makes me happy. I don't know what it is about it. It's great stress relief. And of course, it's really great when you hit the range and you have all the ammo you need, too.
Well, I was sitting over there and I found myself just smiling. And we're listening to, old school gangster rap. So
yeah, man.
It's bringing up it's bringing up good memories and everything. But
you got to get in the groove when you're loading.
Exactly. but you're right. You do just sit there and it's, kind of, I don't know if you call it meditative or what, but just I'm kind of a manufacturing nerd. And so to get to see like all the little things happen as it goes around that turret, just so much fun to, now you've got a bullet you can go and take, or a cartridge you can go and take to the range.
Well, you autographed your first 9mm round.
I did.
And so we may have to take a picture and post that.
Nice. We'll definitely have to do that before we go.
Yeah, man.
Well, Jason, we're here to talk about three gun. We're here to talk about guns. And we'll get into that. But why don't you give us a little background on yourself? Who are you off the range? What do you do when you're not shooting?
I'm I'm a finance guy. I can tell you a brief story that kind of sums it up. I was at one of the regionals in Texas year before last. That was what I consider my freshman year. And
2014?
15,
okay.
And somehow I wound up squatted with Becky Yackley and Diana. I think at that time she was Lydorf. Am I saying that correctly? Now Muller. So. Ryan was there. I think she had been married. But, Di is a great ambassador for the sport. She's a huge advocate for three-gun. And she's really quick to come up to you and say, hello and make you feel welcome. So I had no idea what I was doing. I still don't. But she came up to me and she said something to the effect of, "You popo." And I didn't really know what she was talking about. But, discovered later she was asking me if I was a police officer.
Oh, okay.
And I said, no. I said, I have a degree in security analysis and portfolio management. I'm a finance guy, and I never leave home without 2 financial calculators on me. And about that time, Becky leaned over and she yelled at Di, and she said, "What did he say?" And Di said, "He said he's a nerd." So that's basically it.
That sounds like them.
Yeah, and then they both proceeded to whip me for the rest of the match. And, as far as how you behave in a squad and how you introduce yourself, I think that's something we should talk about because when you do something like you bring a special skill or talent to three-gun, like I know we have some physicians, and Doc Easley's a chiropractor, and I feel like sometimes we probably don't invite people to talk about that as much because we're also focused on three-gun. But I mention that because, when I travel, very occasionally people will ask me a question about finance. It's not a natural act to talk about money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And even more so than maybe your health. People are pretty quick to talk about their ailment. But financially speaking, they don't talk about it. So
it's kind of weird. I don't know if you call it verboten or just like it's not one of our customs to talk about money in this society, Like
Sure.
Even most people would rather speak in public than negotiate a car, right?
Yes.
So and one of those has a greater impact on your financial well-being for long term.
And you want to make sure people know that you have good intentions. You're not trying to maybe cross the line of minding your own business.
Sure.
But at the same time, I'm board certified in financial planning and a graduate degree. I teach graduate level finance. So I'd encourage anybody who sees me on the range, if they have a financial question, pull me aside or talk about that unnatural act. I'm fully licensed to help people, and I love doing that.
Cool.
I've done that my entire professional life, about 18, 19 years now.
Well, one of the things that you just helped me out with financially was figuring out how much it costs to load 9mm ammunition.
Right.
And we figured out how many rounds we'd have to shoot to pay off a Dillon 1050. And I believe was it 35,000? Is that what it was? Or 31,000? 31,000 rounds.
Well, yeah, it depends on how much you want to spend on the components.
Sure.
And if Jacob Betzworth will sell you his old bullet feeder or not at a discount.
Nice.
But somewhere between 20 and 35,000 for a high-end Dillon.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so
you're thinking about your future self, Dave.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what investing is. That's what shooting is. You're making investments in what you're going to do next year and the year after. So economically, and also it's comforting to know that if the ammo disappears, you got a good chance of being able to produce it. We've been through that recently. Kind of as I was getting into the sport, that was subsiding a bit, but it's comforting to know if you want to shoot three-gun next year that you can make the ammo you need to participate.
Yeah, for sure. A couple years ago when they did the when they had like we always call it the ban panic.
Yep.
And you couldn't find 9mm anywhere, and 22 dried up
You were
and
in
everything.
Colorado, right?
Yeah, I was in Colorado too, so we had
Good luck finding the magazine.
Yeah, we had a bunch of other crap, but
yeah.
But one of the guys that I used to shoot with, his name's Walter Tang, really cool dude that ran our local three-gun match at my old range.
Mm-hmm.
He would tease me and a couple other guys and say, "Oh, you young pups, you don't plan for the future." Mm-hmm. And I was like, "Dude, I started shooting last year. How would I know about this?"
Right.
But using that cajoling, I did make some preparations and stuff after that. Where you buy it when it's it's available, like components are now, and then you make a big old pile of it so you can use them down the road. Which again is one of the cooler things about reloading. Is that now you've got all the components.
Well, you get feedback on the range and when you're competing, and it's not always encouraging. Sometimes that's a good example of somebody who's being critical of you. And I guess we should probably work on changing that in 3-gun. And the old adage is something to the effect of unsolicited advice is always criticism.
Right.
So if you see somebody doing something like they don't have the ammo they need, how do you tell them that and help them without being insulting or embarrassing? And I said it recently. I squatted with Team Armalite, and Craig Jordan was there, and a lot of local guys here. And I'll just walk up to somebody, especially as a sophomore in the sport, learned this my freshman year, and say, hey, if you see anything that I'm not doing right or can improve on, by all means, let me know. I learned that in my first year. We were shooting this stage, and you had to load the gun, right? All the components are on top of a barrel, and I was squatted with Lance Dingler, thankfully, and there's a certain way you want to have your magazine pointed, and a certain way you grab the magazine. And so anyhow, I shot the stage, and he just, I think, finally couldn't handle it anymore. He came up to me and said, "This is how you load a gun," right? And he just showed me. And my response was, well, where were you 10 minutes ago before I shot the stage, right? So, I think there's a way to do it. And I would encourage everybody to just tell people, look, if you see anything at all, do that. And the danger is, as you progress in the sport, is I think you stop doing that. You feel like, again, as a sophomore, that word means you think you know something you don't. Learned that from a physician who was still taking some college courses, even though they didn't need to, and asking people for their opinion, even if you're an expert in the field like finance. Sometimes I talk to somebody and I still learn from them, even though it's a field where I consider myself an expert. So that having that humility and being able to communicate that you're open to that, and sometimes the response is, "Oh yeah, well I knew that." You're like, no, you didn't.
All right,
that's hubris and your ego trying to protect you from what just happened. So it's a little bit of a tricky cultural issue when we're shooting. And I've found that everybody's open to it, and everybody's very receptive when you ask a question. It's just, how do you do it the other way around?
Right. Yeah. It's an interesting topic you brought up there, and for a long time I figured, well, I guess for a couple of years now, I figured out a couple of years ago, and I've kind of gone off the method that I want to always be learning, and that if you don't keep learning, you're stagnant. You're done, right? Yeah. And especially when you think about like your profession, your industry, and when you look at the sport. When I was kind of funny story. I was watching some old 3-Gun Nation episodes last night. Yeah. And it must have been when like the quad load first came out, because you wouldn't believe Pat Kelly and Chad Adams' response when Greg Jordan quad loaded. They're like, "Oh, he's quad loading, and this is going to change the game." That whole thing. Yeah. But if people had looked at that and said, "I'm not going to do that," then we'd all still be shuffling shells under and going a lot slower, where the new guys getting in the sport would be doing the quad load. So that whole always learning, always progressing thing is something that I take very seriously in like everything that I do. So and if you've noticed that I don't do that, feel free to call me out on it.
Well, but have no doubt, Dave. We're besties now that you're stuck here in Omaha. So
that's right.
We've crossed that bridge.
So so the point of that is, when I get feedback from someone, if it's something that I've heard before, perhaps they're going to tell me a different way that will click in my head better, or they're going to add like a nuance or something like that that's going to help me. So and again, call me out if you ever see me not doing this, including members of the audience, but I try to take everyone's feedback and let them give it to me, rather than interrupting them with like, "Oh yeah, thanks buddy, I know how to load a magazine." So because there perhaps is something out there, something better that I don't know about, some sort of little nuance or trick or, tilt it this way or look at this so there's always something, and you can do it everywhere in life, like working on cars or, in shooting or your profession or your exercise and stuff like that. So it's,
you have to have the initiative to ask too.
Yeah.
When my first major, and I thought of this because it was the first time Keith Garcia loaded in a match. It was February of 15.
Quad loaded.
And of course, he had about $1,200 of shell caddies on him. And there was a shoot house that Ken Nelson had put together with 40 shotgun targets. Of course, I showed up with carriers that could hold 24 shotgun shells. And I remember the stage because, it was kind of baptism by fire. We had to throw a flashbang grenade through a window and shoot the front door open. I'm like, what did I get myself into? And I remember this guy, he had the chest rig. He had one of the ones he tied on. And I can remember thinking to myself, I could really use that, but I wasn't sure if I was supposed to ask to use that because it's a competition.
Right.
And being new to a major match like that, I thought, well, these guys are pretty serious about things. Maybe that would be considered out of line somehow. And so I didn't ask, and I went with the old pocket method for the last, 16 rounds.
Yeah.
And I missed
16 rounds is a lot to put in your pocket.
Yeah, I also missed a couple targets still that they had stuck in the wall. I mean, who puts a target stuck in a wall? But anyhow, so having that initiative to ask and being receptive to it, and also knowing, when to share and when not to share too. It's all part of being a good squad mate and developing in the sport.
Sure. Okay, so that story is a good newbie story. So let's take it back a little bit, Jason. Let's talk about how you got into the sport of three-gun.
Well, you said it. I like to learn. And if you like to learn, three-gun's a great place for you.
Yeah.
I was a 20-year hunter, long gun, shotgun, rifle, and couldn't hit anything with the pistol. At 5 feet, still, it was maybe a 50-50 shot. And a friend had his concealed carry class. It was a gift from his wife. His name's Ryan Sanjanese. He's a major in the Air Force. Very good friend of ours. And he invited me to come along to the class. And I just went because I like to learn about things. And in particular, I knew very little about a pistol. And so I took the concealed carry class, and the instructor, it's a guy named Rex Sport.
I met him.
Who you met at Nationals last year.
Yeah.
And, he had the time and the patience to give me some of the introductory to actual, not so much competitive shooting, but just introductory to pistol shooting and introduction to, mechanically how things work. And I wasn't at all interested in defensive shooting, let's just say. For me, it was more about learning. And very quickly, I discovered that we have a range, which you've spent a lot of time at now, Dave, here. And this is fantastic because our foremothers were thinking well ahead, as you mentioned earlier, how important that is. When they got essentially a section of land out in the middle of Nebraska, and they built a multi-use training center with long-range 600, 300, and 8 bays, and they're still building it.
Is it like 1962 it was founded?
Yeah. Probably not a real common thing in 1962 to have a shooting club and a shooting range, but they did it. And here we are many years later enjoying their time and effort that they put into it. And as we're shooting, we're enjoying the sport. I think giving back obviously is important because that's the only way we can tell those people thank you for what they did back then is to invest in the sport now. And so I became proficient with a pistol and continued to train and shot a steel challenge match. No, actually the first one was a Glock shooting sports. And what do they call it? GSSF.
Yeah, GSSF. That's a good intro into competition, I think.
Yeah. My bride, Susie, came with me. Poor thing. We sat there for 4 hours and then finally realized we should have put our name in the list early on. And out of that, I got a Glock pistol certificate, and I think I owned a Glock 34 like most people do when they get started. And it just really took off from there. And then I was out at the range practicing, and I saw a multi-gun match, and I said, hang on a second. I know how to use those other 2 guns already. So maybe this is more for me. And like many other things in my life, I like the maybe the more rare, the more challenging way to do things. For example, I love to fish, but I fly fish. I love to hunt, but I bow hunt. And so as a competitive shooter, it seemed like 3-gun was the more challenging thing to do because of all the multiple shooting platforms and mechanisms that we have to use. And so now the challenge is deciding what to work on and how to work on it. We have a lot of great mentors here.
Yeah, no kidding.
Thankfully. Nate Staskowitz and his dad Dave have been very helpful, and Lance and Jake and those guys, Team Benelli in general. And plus, every time you travel, you come back smarter and better.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good thing to take away from the bigger matches.
Sure.
So, Jason, a couple days ago, I pegged you as a triathlete. And we walked into your basement.
Because I'm not a team player. Triathletes don't like to count on other people, right? No drafting allowed.
So we walked into your basement here, and sure enough, there's a bike set up on indoor rollers.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, I was right. So
yep.
Did your experience in like triathlon have anything to do with like, oh, look, there's 3 disciplines here too, something to get better at in each of these guns? Or have you ever thought about that?
I haven't thought about it. I can tell you in my background, I was, captain of my high school swim team, and I was a Category 2 United States Cycling Federation junior racer when I was about the same age, 18, 19. 1992, I rode in the national championships in Altoona, Pennsylvania. But I'm not a runner. So I guess the similarity there between 3-gun those other sports is I wasn't a pistol shooter.
Yeah, interesting.
And I'm still not a runner.
Are you a pistol shooter?
Well, sometimes. I am in July. I've decided that it's a good thing for me to really focus on that. I know many people think you're not going to get to where you want to go in 3-gun if you can't master the pistol. And a lot of the top 3-gunners predicated their success with, master level pistol shooting USPSA. And what I've found is that now in the middle of summer, when 3-gun matches kind of evaporate because of the weather or the timing, etc., it's a little deep breath before the fall season really swings into action. I've used that time to concentrate on the pistol. We have an area match here, and I'm shooting with Casey Ryan, who's on Air Force shooting team, and he's a tremendous pistol shooter. My teammate, WP 3-gun, is Josh Fullerton. He's a single stack A-class pistol shooter. So those guys push me, and I'm fortunate to train with them, but I wouldn't say I'm a pistol shooter yet. I'd say that's an overstatement.
So do you feel like that's the gun you need to work on the most then?
I do, but at the same time, I'm learning to be more confident, and I found that you shoot a lot better when you believe you're going to do well with that platform. And sure enough, the last match, it was probably the long-range rifle that kept me from a little bit higher finish. And, of course, 2 years ago, that would have been my strong suit. So it comes and it goes, as every 3-gunner knows. Sometimes you can, rip off slugs at 90 yards offhand, and the next day you miss one at 50. So
I was talking to Jay Carrillo, and he was saying, Dave, it sounds like you're having troubles with your game. What's going on?
Because it sounds like something Jay would say.
Yeah.
Talk to me, brother, man.
Well, because most people would think like, oh, that guy's rolled down on himself and just walk away. But no, Jay's like, let's dig deeper. Let's talk about it kind of guy. So I told him, like, I feel like, when I started, like, my rifle was strongest, and then I got better at shotgun, and then my pistol was good, and those other 2 lacked. And now I'm just at the point where I know that I'm terrible at all 3.
Yeah.
And, he kind of laughed and did the same thing. Is like, it's sort of a balance of what you want to work on and what you emphasize your time on. And like you said, in July, you're a pistol shooter. Mm-hmm. But then we come here in, what is this, September, and your long-range rifle's suffering just a little bit.
Well, I wouldn't be too hard on yourself, Dave, because you had a couple of good matches this summer, didn't you?
Yeah, not too bad.
Did you have your highest finish ever in 3-gun match?
I did.
So what did you finish?
God, I can't even remember now.
Weren't you like top 20 or something like that?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was like 18 or something like that in TAC Ops. But yeah, and that was like the day after I talked to Jay. So
Yeah.
he's my good luck coin there. Good luck charm.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's been kind of like a whirlwind sort of summer for me, traveling around doing all these matches. But it sounds like you just dove right in your first season in shooting a ton of matches.
Mm-hmm.
So last year, 2015 was your first season. Is that right?
First season traveling.
Shot
my first 3-gun in August of 14.
Okay. So how many matches did you shoot in 2015?
I decided to shoot every regional and nationals
Okay.
in my first full year of travel.
Nice.
So,
How did that work out?
Great. I mean, number one, the people are amazing. I shot a couple of other matches, but by far and away, 3-Gun Nation people provided me with the schedule that I needed. And also, I discovered I could sign up for those things in December.
Mm-hmm.
And many other matches were full in December. So lesson learned there. I spent most of that first year on a wait list. So if you're a match director, I've probably been on your wait list at some point. And, the travel experience, I had to learn very quickly how to travel, not just with firearms, but especially the ammunition. Learn the hard way that you need to make sure your ammo has arrived at the hotel and that the package was not rejected by the hotel manager.
So have you ever had a problem with that?
Yeah. You could say that. So I think it was the Eastern Regional. I flew into Washington, D.C., and along the way I learned that, U.S. Postal Service, those people get pretty excited when you walk in there and ask them if they ship ammo. That didn't go well. I think I owe some lady some new underwear at the local post office. She panicked. I reassured her, it's not going to bite you. And the UPS store, I discovered, is not a UPS shipping facility. It's more of a franchise, kind of like a authorized Verizon retailer or something like that. So I found the UPS hub, and thank goodness for that, because if properly marked, they'll ship the small arms for you. And I tried to ship to the match in the hotel. I found out that the hotel was probably the way to go. And I tracked the package all the way to this town where I was staying, and I thought for sure I was in good shape. Well, I got there, and the package wasn't there. And then it wasn't at the match. No one from 3-Gun Nation took it out to the match. And so, you call Dick's Sporting Goods. Say, so what do you guys have? So that match, we had a home defense slug at about $2,000, about 2,000 feet per second. I didn't realize it, but I just shot out my rifle barrel. And so I was trying these 2 off-the-shelf 55 grain 223 rounds, and I couldn't get them to zero for the life of me. And I thought it was the ammo. It turned out I just lost the rifling somehow on most of my barrel. I was shooting wide box 115 grain pistol ammo. So lesson learned on that one. And then on the way back, I discovered it was in fact the hotel manager that told me that she couldn't find the ammo, who had rejected the delivery. And worse than that, only a part of the ammunition was returned to me.
Oh, man.
On the return trip through the UPS depot, the package was destroyed, and I lost about half the ammo. I had to make an insurance claim.
So, like, air quotes destroyed, or?
I don't know. I mean, I grew up in the Chicago area.
Oh, yeah.
So sometimes things fall off a truck. I'm not sure what happened. But I know I only got back about a third of what I sent.
Oh, that's terrible.
And then I learned that you need to have receipts for ammo to prove what's in there. When you mark it with UPS, it's $250 insured value. If you say it's worth more than that, that's fine, but you just have to prove it later. And so they returned it to me. They sent me a check back. But lesson learned on how to travel with ammunition. So a lot of those growing pains the first year. And I'm glad that a lot of them are behind me, and I'm sure I have much more to learn in the future.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Well, so you shot regionals, and you got to go shoot nationals. What was your first nationals experience like?
Well, that was the Keith Garcia moment, and in Keith's interview on your show, which I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed all of your interviews. The only bad part about this one is it's me. I mean, I'm looking forward to listening to it, but I'm going to listen to myself, right? I
Right.
so much look forward to listening to you interviewing other people and learning from them. But yeah, I went to the desert in February, and there was snow on the cactus there, and I ran the 8 stages. I met Sky Killian, who's an excellent shooter, and like most new people in the sport, I brought my significant other with me. I mean, that usually happens for 1 or 2 matches, and then you never see them again unless they shoot.
Right.
And so she came with me, and she was interested that there was a female shooting in my squad, Sky. And Sky, as you know, is extraordinarily friendly and a great ambassador for the sport. And so after the first day, clearly she was much better than many of the men that were shooting. And so Susie, my bride, she said, well, she's got to be military or law enforcement, something like that. So I said, well, I'll ask her tomorrow, what she does. And so I said, Sky, if you don't mind me asking, what do you do off the range? And she smiled and said, well, I homeschool my kids and I'm a stay-at-home mom. Well, whatever ego I had left, immediately exited the building. She did serve as a law enforcement officer at one point, as her husband does. And but meeting those kind of people and maintaining those relationships was just part of traveling. I mean, you get to meet everybody when you do the regionals. Shooters from all over the country, and the guys from the Minnesota 3-gun group to the guys in Texas like Mike Whitesides and all those guys, and the Hayes brothers who eventually made a pistol for me. Everybody in California, the Keith Garcias of the world, to all the great shooters down in the Southeast, and so you meet the people, you build the relationships, and that's probably the best part of it. The challenges are different depending on what time of match you shoot. As you know, the 3-gun nation's a little bit different than maybe it would be in the desert of Utah versus, say, the bays in frostproof Florida where we were earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're not going to reach out more than maybe 100 yards. Great matches, all of them, but different by their nature. And that's what's wonderful right now, in my opinion, about our 3-gun schedule is because, if you come here in Nebraska and you practice with Lance and Jate and Nate, they're practicing for the next match, but more than that, they're practicing for the style of that match. So before Rocky Mountain, they're shooting in unstable positions at 400 or 500 yards.
Mm-hmm.
When we practice for the Hornaday zombie match, we're doing headshots because they have clays that are swinging on twine that you have to hit with a rifle. And so that's what's wonderful about our schedule and the major matches now. Regardless of what you do, well, you're going to be challenged at some point, and if you do something poorly, some style of our shooting discipline, it's going to show up at some point and catch up with you. So you have to be a well-rounded 3-gunner to shoot all the major matches, both 3-gun nation and everything else.
Right.
Yep.
So back to 3-gun nation nationals, did you feel like you were well-rounded enough by that time to shoot that match?
Yeah, I over-prepared, though. I probably psyched myself out a little bit too much.
How did you over-prepare?
Well, I got into the mental preparation of the sport at the end of my freshman year.
Okay.
Because I started to realize that once I was a competent shooter at some point, that there was a lot more to performing well, especially in competition. And so I talked to a friend of the family who was a sports psychologist and kind of took a deep dive into the psychological aspects of the sport, and I probably psyched myself out a little bit too much. I didn't finish in the top 100 where, based on my results at that point, I probably should have done a lot better than that, ran past a bunch of targets and things like that. So, because it was nationals, I just assumed it was a lot bigger deal. I mean, there's a lot more stress, and I wanted to do well because I knew people would be there from all that other regionals. And it was that. It was challenging. But at the same time, I was probably a little bit more, more overly prepared than I should have been mentally. I should have been more relaxed is the key.
Mm-hmm.
The key. Where I was shooting much too much in the conscious mind. I was really thinking about things, and it was at that time where I had enough basic knowledge, and I was learning new techniques pretty quickly, and I was trying to incorporate them into my stage plans and things like that. I was probably out in front of my skis a little bit too much.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you mic and you give yourself time penalties. and that doesn't go well.
So it's interesting that you brought up this this topic because it's something that I've been considering lately, and I can't remember if we discussed it on one of our range trips, but I had a situation recently where I was at a match, and the ROs were barking orders at our squad, and it just really bothered me. I'm like, I'm supposed to be, calm and zen, and this is messing with my head and stuff like that. And so, of course it did. I forgot to bring one extra pistol magazine and, left a bunch of targets standing and stuff like that. So ended with a bunch of failure to engages. It was pretty terrible to finish that way when I had a pretty good match going. So in a lot of the windshield time that I've had driving and thinking, I've been trying to put together what happened. Did what they were doing really affect my mental game that much? Or did I let it bother me because I was concerned that it would bother me? What was actually going on there?
Well, it's in your frontal lobe. You're thinking about it.
Yeah.
And the more you think, the worse you shoot.
Yeah.
And, as far as the mental preparation, the good side of it, in my opinion, is that you're confident. You have enough confidence that you can make all the shots, and that you have the skill level, which you do now, because if you finish top 20 in a match, you have the skill. And so it's just a matter of, okay, what was it about that match at that time that helps you perform that well? And that's usually between your ears.
Right.
So having that confidence, and then also a strange mixture of relaxation. I mean, if you can ever get yourself to completely relax before that buzzer goes off, that's one of the more challenging things to do in any sport, especially this one, because the buzzer, as everybody knows, it's an awful noise. I mean, other sports use like a gun to start the race, but that wouldn't make sense in what we do. Everyone would just start constantly, right? So that nice combination of confidence and relaxation are critical. And I wouldn't recommend you do this when you have your windshield time. But it's kind of like looking out the left, the driver's side window while you're driving forward. I mean, it's in your subconscious. I mean, you can kind of see out of the corner of your eye where the target's out, but you just have to believe that you're going to make it down the road. I mean, that's the big thing I accomplished this year mentally, is to know, okay, you can go faster, and you're still going to hit the targets, and you can relax, enjoy yourself a little bit more, and you're just going to go faster if you can put all that together. Anything that gets into your conscious mind, your front lobe, you start thinking about it, and it's emotion too. I mean, sometimes I get competitive, or somebody, maybe it's not an RO, which is rare for me. I think most of the ROs haven't really been a distraction at any point.
Yeah.
But maybe it's another competitor. Maybe somebody says or does something that gets your blood pressure up, right? Or they mistreat somebody. They say something that's inflammatory, and all of a sudden it's in the front of your mind, and you're in the conscious mind, and that's not going to go well, And sometimes being competitive, I know some people think they don't want to know where their score is.
Yeah.
And it's pure speculation. I believe that's tied to this idea that's in your consciousness. If you're thinking about what you need to do, you're probably not living subconsciousness. I think this is kind of funny. Somebody said once, I'm shooting in my unconscious state, or something like that. I'm like,
right.
If you see somebody shooting a guy that's unconscious, you better
go tackle him.
Yeah. Get low first, then disarm him. Not unconscious,
subconscious, right?
Yeah, relax, subconscious, and belief and confidence in yourself that you're going to go fast and hit the targets, and you might surprise yourself. I think that's one thing I go out of my way to tell shooters who ask me, in the local range for any sort of advice, and I'll give them advice, and they'll say, well, I'm not there yet, or I need to work on that. I said, well, that's good. And I said, but I think you're a better shooter than you might think you are. You might be better than this than you believe you are. So don't discount that. You might be there already, and until you believe that you can do it, it's just not going to happen. And I just had that experience professionally, where a year ago the markets were in turmoil. People thought China was going to collapse, and that their GDP was going to dry up. And we had a terrible August, and we do our business planning in September, and feedback I got from the fine professional people I work with was that we were not going to have a good year next year. And since then, everything has kind of fallen in place that meant we should have had a good year. And a lot of times we didn't achieve it, and the lesson from that is if you don't think you're going to have a good year, well, you're not going to have a good year.
Right.
Even if, everything lines up where it should happen. If you don't believe it, it's just, it's not going to happen. You have to be optimistic about it.
So then I think you answered my my question then, is you can get up in your head so much about the mental game that you affect your game.
Yeah, I don't have as much experience in three-gun as I do other sports and other competitive things in life, professionally and otherwise, but I can relate this to some of the great coaches I've been exposed to, who immediately, when the player comes off the field, will say, "This is how you're supposed to do that." And they've always praised the positive.
Mm-hmm.
Every time they make a great play, great. And if it's not a great play, they're there with constructive instruction on how to properly do something. And so that's critical in on and off the range, whether it's in life or something else. If you have a mentor, somebody who can tell you this is how you're supposed to do it,
mm-hmm.
that's really critical, especially with young people. If they have a mentor who only wants good for them and praises them when they do well, and then when they fall down is the first one there to pick them up. If you want to be supportive to somebody, or you want to be somebody's buddy, it's really easy to do that when things are going well for them.
Yeah, sure.
But if you just, happen to be a Nebraska football coach and you lost to Oklahoma for the third time in a row, and your athletic director beats you home to your house after a loss, that's when it counts. When you're winning the game and you're hoisting the trophies, everybody is there for you. So having that mentoring relationship and having a positive impact on somebody, and to do it without maybe anything for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the most formative relationships that you have in shooting and in life, both.
So you've made you've grown by leaps and bounds from where you've started in a pretty short amount of time when you consider that you've been shooting three-gun for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Who are those mentors that you've had along the way?
Well, I mentioned all the local ones,
mm-hmm.
but I can tell you the difference between learning something in 2016 and maybe in 1996 is YouTube and the internet.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, it's just fantastic. I mean, no matter what you want to learn more about, it's this constant source. And it may be poor instruction, granted. But the point is you can feed your brain. And everybody is a Renaissance person. Like, I think the last Renaissance man was Goethe 350 years ago. That's the last guy that knew everything about everything. And then after that, there's too much information. Well, we're back there again.
Right.
If you have the internet connection, I mean, you have a cell phone in your hand, you can really reach out. As far as in the three-gun game, the first year, a lot of that is gear and understanding what people are using and what you have, and economically speaking, what's worth buying now to help you the most.
Yeah.
And so
it's like an 80-20 analysis of your gear.
Yeah, right.
What 20% can you buy to make 80% of the impact?
You save up X amount of dollars. What should you buy first?
Sure.
So in a mentoring relationship, being able to prioritize, I think, is really critical. So having that influence on a new shooter, helping them understand, okay, you're going to show up to your first major match and you can have a muzzle brake or you can have enough shell caddies for the shotgun stage. Get the shell caddies.
Right.
Stuff like that. So those mentors, of course, locally are Jacob Bestworth and Nate Staskowitz and Lance Dingler, Casey Ryan I mentioned, and my teammate Josh Fullerton have been formative. And some of my early on training with Rex, and it's innumerable the mentors that you have. At each match, it changes. I think our sport would really benefit from a mentoring system where X the liability factor. I'm not sure what that would be. All roads lead to insurance companies nowadays. But if we could somehow partner a senior shooter, and I don't mean that by age, I mean by experience, with the junior shooter, it happens informally.
Mm-hmm.
But what'll happen is you'll have a ripple effect, because when you teach one person, you mentor one person, they're bound to mentor one or two more, and so on and so forth. And so that's how the sport's growing right now. You have these informal mentors where when you have questions, you call them, you ask them, and they will craft a response that's right for you, but also gives you that privileged knowledge that we need in this sport to be competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these things that maybe aren't written down, how to be a good squad mate and stuff like that. I mean, it's not in the manual anywhere, but it'll help you over time. So having that privileged knowledge of the shooting sports, and it's as deep in this sport as any sport I've ever been involved with. I mean, some of the little nuanced things from shooting positions to how to manipulate triggers and all the 3 different platforms, what sort of front sight to have on your shotgun and what sort of shoes to wear. And I mean, it's endless.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there must be a checklist of 8,000 things. And I'd say maybe I know 2,000 of them now. I have a long way to go. So that's where that humility comes into. You keep your mind open and you put your ego in your back pocket and you say, hey, please let me know if you see something that I do that maybe it's just a style thing. Maybe you do it differently just because it's a style thing. I still want to know about it. I still want to learn. And as far as a mentoring relationship, I probably ought to mention the software that I'm using now. It's called the Max Michel Shot Coach.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And what's great about that is someone can mentor you. This is kind of like in the Christian faith tradition where you have a saint, right? I mean,
right.
You have somebody who is there as an example, if you will. And so what that means in 3-gun world is you film Greg Jordan running the same stage that you're running. And I did that in Rockcastle. And at the end, there's a mystery of how he was 6 seconds faster than me on the stage, because I thought it went pretty well. And if your stage plan is about the same, which ours really was, I credit that to me being around him the day before when he was walking the stage. Thanks, Greg. But if your stage plan is pretty similar, then what you can do is break down that stage into its components, and it'll help you identify where the time savings was for Greg that wasn't maybe there for me. And so maybe it's movement, maybe it's transition, maybe it's splits between shots, whatever it is. I mean, you come away from that with a mentoring experience because you just saw somebody do it. Now, Greg didn't look at me before the stage and say, okay, Hince, pay attention.
Right.
You're really going to need to work on your transitions, and I'm about to show you how fast you can do it. He didn't do that. But if I film him and I can, on the plane on the way home or whatever, I can look at that and break it down to components and figure out, okay, here's the 6 seconds where it came down to, and as Jacob told us on the range yesterday, that's how he practices.
Right.
He'll break a stage down in components and say, okay, this one component didn't go as well, and that's what I'm going to work on the next week.
Yeah, with first of all, did you ask Greg if you were able to video him, or did you just do it?
I didn't ask him.
And then are you concerned about stealing his soul?
Well, there were 10 other people stealing his soul at the same time. So I think Greg's soul's in good shape.
All right.
Because he's been videotaped a lot.
Yeah, no
shooting,
kidding.
And he seems to be of good mind and body at this point.
So the other day when we were on the range, actually, let's just say last week when we were on the range, we had the fortunate experience to shoot with Lance on one day, and Jacob on another.
And Nate was in high school.
Yeah. Nate was having peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in 6th hour. But
Nate was in the study hall.
That's right. So we got to shoot with those guys. We got to practice with them a little bit, and definitely very, very different styles, which is really cool. And that's one thing I really love about this game is you have the really quiet, calm, cool, collected dudes, and then you have the boisterous guys, and they're all gunning for the top prize.
Yeah.
And there's so many different styles to do it, so you can pick what you like best, which is also what I like about doing this show here is I get to speak to everyone, and then the audience can see who they identify with the best and choose that person as their virtual mentor or whatever you want to call it. But we back to their different styles. So when we were shooting with Lance, he would watch you make errors and watch you do it again, and then he'd say, well, you might try this.
Yeah.
Or, I can't remember, I don't even think he asked it to give the feedback or something, or have you tried doing this?
But it's expected.
It's subtle. And it's subtle.
It's always expected when you get into an informal practice,
Right.
that whoever the better shooter is kind of takes over at some
For
point.
sure.
And that's intentional. We all need that. But yeah, that's how they go about that as a style thing.
Yeah.
It's a personality thing.
Yeah. And then to wrap that up, when we were shooting with Jacob, Jacob has a lot louder personality, and he's more forward about everything. So it was, what are you trying to accomplish with your drill? You need to do it this way, and you'll be better off. Watch me how I do this. Now you do it, and then he's picking up the timer and handing us mags and stuff like that. So it was really cool to see that, because those guys are such great friends, and they feed off each other so much, as we talked about in one of the episodes that we did with them. But they have like completely different styles, and I feel like I learned something from each of them. So if you're concerned about picking a mentor and sticking with it, you can choose to get that mentorship from Greg Jordan, if you're able to squad with him on one stage and do the Max Michel shot timer, or just chatting with someone in the parking lot at a different stage. So there's
most of those guys are a lot like me in that they're concerned about how they compare to other competitors. And I would say this last year I learned a lot about a lifelong friend who does 3-gun, not to place or for a prize table, but I really learned a lot from him about just the overall experience of being part of it. He's not at all concerned about maybe timing out. He has gear, but I wouldn't say it's the very highest end. His name's Matt Meyer. We call him Quagmire. I've known the guy since Reagan was in office.
Yeah,
and he's one of these guys I've encouraged to get into the sport. And we're very, very different in our style. But I assumed at some point everybody was more concerned about where they finished. That's not the case. Not everybody's like me. That's what's great about 3-gun. There are those people that do it for the experience. There are some people, I think, do it for the accolades that other people know they're shooters and they talk about them shooting and things like that. I think there are some probably prize hunters out there that are really turned on by winning the best prize or finishing the highest. There's a lot of people out there that I think
in it for the Instagram photos.
Yeah, I've got a buddy like that that's killed a lot of fish because he'll take 16,000 pictures of this fish that he caught. It's like, hey, dude, pose less, fish more. Put the fish back in the water. The fish is suffocating right now. Let's just put it back in the water. Right? The fish can't breathe in the air.
That's a good
Put
point.
the fish in the water. So, there's some vanity involved and hubris and ego, and some people are tied into, I don't know, maybe kind of the panache of the thing shooting. And some people are just surprised their face is still there after they shoot their AR for the first time. Dave, I got to tell you, that was one of the funniest things I've ever heard on the range. So for the audience, if you'll allow me to be the host for a moment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Dave put together a new rifle. And I was there for the first shot, and he just nonchalantly looks at me and he says, I'm always kind of surprised that my face is still attached after the first shot in a new AR. You get so used to shooting an AR, especially with a muzzle brake.
Right.
I don't know how many decibels that is, but it's up there. Mm-hmm. And, first time you do it, a little, drip of pee runs down your leg usually.
It's a big explosion right in front of your face.
Yeah, but that's it. Back to the mental side of the sport, that doesn't bother me at all.
Sure.
For probably the first full year of shooting 3-gun, that first shot was never, accurate because I was always anticipating that this explosion is going to go off, but now I've done it enough times, this doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
I got a really good kick out of that. I won't forget that.
In my defense, that only happens on the first shot because, I know that I put it together well. Like I know that I followed the torque sequence. I know I did this. I know I did that. But it's all new components, and they've never run well together. So
you're like an electrical engineer that designs a new circuit, high voltage, and they're always standing back like 25 feet further than everybody else.
Let the technicians throw the lever.
Yeah. Hey, you might want to throw that lever with the stick.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I trust you. Well, look where I'm standing.
Yeah. I'm that guy.
You're
for
still
sure.
amazed that it works and it's safe.
Yeah, that's what I think all the time. It's like, I'll be darned, that worked.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do this.
Yep.
So
Funny stuff.
we, Jason, we talked about the the gear that you need for three gun.
Sure.
And everyone makes those purchases
Yep.
at the beginning, and they try to make a purchase a little bit faster than they should because they get so excited about coming out for the sport. So if you could look back at like your gear purchases and how you got to where you're at right now, what do you think has given you the 80% versus the 20%?
Well, there's a handful of people that know what they're doing that I was somehow got connected to. The nice part about what we do is when we're either progressed beyond some type of equipment or we need to upgrade it, there's usually a market for what we previously were using.
That's a good point.
And a lot of things, there's depreciation and there's not really a market for it, especially as you get more customizable and things like that. And so pretty early on, I had my mentors push me in certain directions towards certain gear manufacturers. Two that have been fantastic in the pistol world for me have been the Logan Bills at Tooth and Nail Armory there in Missouri. They host the Missouri Championship. Hopefully it's a little bit warmer there next year. But Josh and Matt Loganbill are not only mentors for me on the gear side, but I also admire their family dynamic. My dad's not a shooter. He's not a hunter. And this is a father-son team. And so they've taught me a lot about gear, but also taught me a lot about being a good family. You see all those kids and everybody's there helping with the match, and that's just fantastic. And then most of the time now I shoot a Hayes pistol, and Aaron Hayes has been on the show many times. But, if you're going to get something like that done, it's going to take a while. You're going to want to make sure it's done correctly. But you need to know what to ask for. And that's where those mentors are critical. Lance has helped me put together a couple of rifles. And, with Team Benelli around, if you show up with something besides a Benelli on the range, they would be fine with it. I mean that tongue in cheek.
Sure.
But that's getting into an M2 right away. It's fantastic. Now, you may not know this, Dave, but the shells can go in backwards on these shotguns.
We got to keep bringing that up, huh?
Yeah, shiny side towards you, right?
That's what Lance told me.
Regardless of what kind of gear you have.
Yeah, that's the pro tip that Lance gave me. Shiny side backward.
I had one going backwards at Nationals. It's because I basically shot in the dark. It was a shoot house stage where you had to shoot your shotgun out of that shoot house into the bay, and I got a lot of that boys for shooting, even though it was late enough where the match director said, "Look, dude, you don't have to go." I'm like, "I'm going." Well, in hindsight, that may not have been the best idea because I had a shell on my belt backwards. But having the right gear, not having to, buy something twice that you can't get out of. I have a Safariland belt, and that was a fantastic decision. Invictus Practical shell caddy is another great decision. So a lot of these things that I use, I've been using for 2 years now. And what's nice about it is anytime you make a gear change, it's like a 2-month reset button. I go from a Glock 34, which is just fine in its own right, to a 2011. That's 5,000 rounds, and 6 weeks later, you're finally back to probably where you were with the Glock. So it's not so much about the gear, it's how many times you can get away without changing gear. That's critical because it's a matter of time. Just like our stage, you have to be efficient, and you can't waste time or money, either one. And we talked about reloading. Well, the danger there is we enjoy doing it so much. Maybe we should be practicing doing something else, dry fire, right? Instead of picking up brass and reloading. So economically, there's part of the equation, but it's also how much time and energy do you spend on it? And I just count it as one of those things each week that I do that counts for me getting better at 3-gun. That just kind of checks the box for me.
So I'm glad you brought that up because you mentioned to me that you try to do something 4 days a week. Is that right? To get better at the game?
Yeah, that's the Lanny Basham. I mispronouncing his name. Bassham. Lanny Basham. That's his, let's just say, axiom. is that if you do something maybe 3 to 4 times a week, you're maintaining your ability. But if you're doing something more than 4 times a week, you're probably improving. And I think that's true from a life of being an athlete and a competitor. If you can get to that 4 or 5 times, there's some sort of utility that comes in that extra time a week that compounds on itself versus maybe the time you spend getting reacquainted with things and just maintaining things. There's some more utility in that. So, in a given week, if I can get to the range 2 to 3 times, very fortunate. It's 25 minutes from all of us. We get there. Another thing I count is when I do something for somebody else who's in the sport. So earlier this week, a friend bought a Glock 34, and he wants, gets a competition part for it. He wants me to show him how to break down the pistol. I count that. I think if you're going to do something 4 or 5 times a week, one of those times should involve somebody outside of the sport, taking somebody to the range who's a first-time shooter, giving back to the sport somehow, mentoring. You get to the range and you see the guys that are kind of coming up behind you, and you spend half an hour with them showing them the drill you're running. And that's that mentoring trickle effect, because they're going to show all those other guys, and they're going to show all those other guys, and before you know it, you've had a positive impact on the sport. So I think that counts as one of those boxes you check once a week. You help somebody else out.
So we're going to count the podcast then? Do we get to check the box?
Yeah,
on that?
We reloaded today and checked the box, and so that's 2.
Yeah. Plus, you taught me how to reload, so that's like 2.5.
Let's see if they work first, Dave, before we
before we get too excited.
before we claim any sort of ownership of that.
Well, Jason, if you can, tell us how you've set up your practice those few times a week that you can make it out to the range.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do it by field? Do you do it by? Do you have like some sort of regimen written down? How does that work for you?
I do have a regiment, but going through the calendar, it's important for me to take a break, and it's also relative to where I live. And so December, January, or even as we approach hunting season now, I'm going to break the bow out and spend some time out in a tree by myself. But, things will kind of wind down. I'm going to shoot nationals and Surefire, and then the AMU match, which I'm really looking forward to. Normally I would shut things down after October. Yeah. So November, December, January, February, 4 times a week, I'm doing something Andy Peterson-like. I'm doing cardio, I'm doing weights, I'm doing something to try and maintain my overall physical fitness. And I don't find that I need to do that as much during the season because, as you know, if you shoot a major and you're back and forth and you're resetting like you should be, and I've got this thing on my phone that most people probably have that says how far you've walked that day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a major match, probably 5 to 6 miles of walking on a Friday. If it's a 2-day match, shoot Saturday, Sunday. So it's probably 5 to 6 miles of going through an airport or traveling. And then on match day, I found it somewhere between 7 to 8.5. And so if you think about the exercise that comes with that, and you've been with us on the range this week too.
Sure.
So I don't feel like I need to concentrate as much on the cardio stuff, when we're in season and we're practicing, especially if it's 105 degrees in Nebraska and you're in July running pistol drills with Casey Ryan, who's a super fast shooter. Trying to keep up with that cat at any temperature, you're going to break a sweat. So,
well, yeah, and then just doing a couple of the 8-round side to side.
Yeah. The AMU
drills that we were doing.
Yeah, that Manny Bragg drill.
There you go, Manny Bragg drill.
Yeah, where if you miss, it doesn't count. You got to keep going until you hit something 8 times, and that can get your heart rate up there. Start to respect the shot a little bit more.
Especially if you're holding your breath the whole time.
Yeah, that's how you get to unconscious.
Right.
You pass out at some point.
Unconscious
I only
performance.
have a Israeli bandage and a tourniquet and some duct tape. So if you go down, I don't know, probably splash some water on you. That's the only.
It's about the best you can do.
That's the only medical treatment I could come with at the time. As far as throughout the week goes, when I have a chance, I try and shoot 350 to 400 pistol rounds when I go out and practice, and I'm practicing pistol. And when I started, I learned...
Is that each week?
In a week, I try and do that twice.
Oh, okay.
Again, I'm focusing on this, and and I want to make sure they count. I just don't want to make, just not there to make noise. But back to the progression, when you initially start shooting, you don't realize it, but you probably have a 7-pound trigger or something like that. And after 200 shots, you're fatigued. Your muscles are fatigued, and you lose that fine motor movement that you need to be accurate. And so you kind of work your way up to that. But anymore now, it's as a sophomore in the sport, kind of going into my third year, my junior year, it's a lot more about movement, staying low. It's about shooting on the move. And it seems like the holy grails at this point in 3-gun, for at least my point in development, would be shooting offhand. Seems to be one of those things that, unlike quad loading, where everybody's doing it really quickly right now, that if you could shoot offhand, you're going to, that one particular skill will serve you well in the results. Of course, shooting on the move is a big thing. When I was squatted with the Armalite guys and with Tommy Thacker guys like that, they're always moving,
Right.
They're constantly moving, and rarely are they posting up. So shooting on the move. And then the other thing that I've noticed this year is precision shooting. And what I mean by that is smaller pistol targets at distance, shotgun targets with no shoots next to them. I saw that at Rock Castle, and I saw it at the Eastern Regional, which was the first regional this year down in Frostproof, where somebody parks a no-shoot 6 inches away from a shotgun target. And so you really need to know your chokes and what your pattern is at distance. That precision shooting also means, you have to have the cheat sheet on where your rounds are going to impact at a close distance on a rifle. Where your point of impact is at 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 yards, how far to shoot above the target if you're going to use the center dot, or if you're going to use your bullet drop compensation on reticle, which one you have to line up at a certain distance. Knowing those are very important now because of this kind of holy grail skill of this precision shooting. And then, of course, the rifle shooting. I'm at the stage where knowing what position to get into is really helping, because these unstable shooting positions with rifle at distance and knowing what round to use at distance too. Those are kind of the 3 things. So shooting on the move, shooting offhand, and then precision shooting. Those 3 things, I think, are where a lot of match directors are spending a lot of time and money right now.
Yeah, I would definitely agree on that. When I was hanging out with Nick Atkinson earlier this year, he was saying, offhand shooting, number 1.
Yep.
And then can't remember the other things he told me. That's probably bad.
Well, Nick's not going to feel too good about that.
No, I'm kidding.
See what a great mentor Nick is.
I've got video of it. It's okay. But so offhand shooting for sure. So then Generation 3-gun is the first match I've been to where not only is offhand shooting going to help you, it's the only thing you can do. There's no other. There's no barrel.
You're standing in a box.
Exactly. You're standing in a box, or it's midway through the stage when you're running. Got to post up real quick, take that shot. So that was the first experience I've had with that. So I'm grateful that earlier this year, months ago, Nick told me that, and it's been something that I've been working on. So your next match is Nationals, 3-Gun Nation Nationals. Okay, that 3-Gun Nation Nationals coming up in a couple weeks here. Hopefully, I'll make it there too.
Yeah.
If the if you can think of
Dave, you got to be positive, Dave.
Yes, I'll make it there as well. So
I'll see you there, Dave.
Truck will be
Don't
fixed.
get in your head, Dave.
And I'll get there. So if you can think of Nationals, now it's going to be in a new venue. It's at VIR.
I've been there.
And you've shot there before.
Yeah.
So what kind of stuff are you going to be working on over the next couple of weeks to prepare for that match?
Well, they have the tower there, which overlooks the field. So I'm expecting there to be, I think, maybe up to 300-yard shots there. And it's not going to be with a resting heart rate. Because you're probably going to have to go up the steps on the tower.
Have to climb the tower
to get into shooting position, which means you're probably, 120 beats per minute or higher by the time you get up there. And if I was going to design the stage, that would be at the end of the stage, so you're probably going to be fatigued. So I'll spend the next couple weeks running up the hill at our local range and getting into a shooting position. And even in a bay, I'll shoot, 1-inch circles at 50 yards and use that as my preparation for the match. And then I know there's a shoot house there where it's probably going to be a lot of quick target transitions, ducking in and out of doors, and there's a hallway. I think they have 4 rooms in that. And last time we shot it, we had targets outside the house, inside the house, all over. Another thing I noticed is we've got something like 750 round count.
It's a big round count.
Yeah, and a side shotgun match. And so when you get there, Dave, we expect you to have all of our shotgun shells still with you.
That's right.
Otherwise, UPS stock's going to go way up. And that's not a recommendation, by the way. Got to make sure I mention that. So, yeah, I expect there to be a lot of shooting. The unique part of that range is that you have, or they had, about 4 stages on one side of the racetrack and 4 on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming they'll divide it up, where you spend one day on one side of the track, one day on the other side.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and so you'll have to be able to, as always, keep your gear organized. That's something I admire that people can do that I'm still struggling with is, during that match day, having your gear organized. One of the things that works for me is I have these 3 different colored bags. I think they're waterproof bags you get at Walmart in the camping section. But I try and keep my shotgun caddies in one bag, rifle mags and everything in another bag, and pistol stuff in another bag. I keep all that in my Tenzing backpack, and then I have my Safariland case, which is very good. I pack that Safariland case, by the way, on top of my weapons in a hard case when I travel, so I always have that with me.
Mm-hmm.
But, you don't think it makes that big of a difference until you try it, but if you're going from stage to stage and you're doing what you should do with helping your squad, having the equipment prepared for the subsequent stage it's another challenge.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you're digging around looking for that pistol pouch that you have to clip into your Safariland rig or whatever, it's like, okay, if you can't find that, all of a sudden you're in that conscious mind and you're not relaxed.
Oh, yeah.
You're not confident.
Like, even if you can't find it for a second, it's like a little bit of a panic that sets in and will get you out of that.
Where's the long range ammo?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've done that one.
So staying organized, that's a big part of a match like that, and knowing what you're going to shoot and being prepared for that day. And then it happens occasionally. It happened at Rockcastle Pro-Am, where we're going to shoot an extra stage because it's going to RAIN. I don't want to say it, right? So in that case, you better be ready to go if they're going to stretch you a little further one day for another stage. The Armalite guys were nice enough to loan me some extra ammo, and I got through the extra stage we shot. But you have to be prepared for some of these things where maybe you're delayed. Remember last year, one of the props went down at Gen 3,
mm-hmm.
and they ended up throwing the stage out. It was that really cool water stage that they have. But, there was a delay there. So you have to be prepared for those things and stay organized.
Yeah, organization is key, something I'm still working on as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fortunate that I have like a lot of stuff with me, but
mm-hmm.
sometimes it's like too much stuff, where
it's
like I don't need 38 slugs for this no slug stage here.
Yeah.
But I still have that box, in the truck. So.
And the more people the easier it is. Like Jessica, right, who works at F1, she's like, yeah, I have some 9mm. The people just offer it to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's nice to have those relationships when you're traveling because, I've seen even Taryn Butler get a 60-round rifle mag from somebody who was at the same match because, he's coming from California. Obviously, he's not bringing coupled 20s and a 60-round mag.
Right.
But, he's going to sure know who to ask to borrow that and see if they have it. So that having that connection, that network is very important because it might be the 20-round couple mags are what you need to shoot off some rooftop that you didn't know was going to be there when you left California.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. So looking forward to nationals here. You've got a couple things that you're going to be practicing over the next couple weeks. Got a couple last questions for you, Jason.
Uh-huh.
And I'm kind of leery to ask you about this one because we were talking about positive things, but can you tell me about your most spectacular disqualification?
What's spectacular about my disqualifications is this. It's always been with an empty gun.
All right.
So, twice in pistol matches.
Oh, yeah, one of your stories is one of my favorites.
Yeah, they call me 124.5 because that's the power factor that I came up with at our area match. And then another one happened actually after a match had expired. The match was over.
It's my favorite.
And the pistol spies turned me in for taking a gun out of the safety area incorrectly, and rightly so. But all of those things are there. Oh, I should mention the other DQ was just a stage DQ where I was dismounting from the shotgun, which was empty, and I put it in the drop box, which is it's kind of like one of those wooden slides that has a box on the bottom, and my tube was not in the box. It was outside of the box. But the point of all the disqualifications and the rules is that they're there to modify behavior, and so that people know they're encouraged to change their behavior so they don't get disqualified. And is it Brian Vaught, is that his name, who reminded us all so seriously and rightly so that we're dealing with firearms here, right?
Yes.
And if you spend as much time with them as we do, they kind of become golf clubs.
Yeah, for sure.
And I actually researched that, Dave. I thought, how many people get injured playing golf versus handling golf clubs? And what was surprising is over a quarter of the golf club injuries happen to young people. I think it was between 5 and 14 at home when they're swinging their parents' golf clubs in the house.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they get head injuries.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So maybe we should have safes for golf clubs and firearms. I don't know.
Sounds good.
So yeah, those
You have to disassemble your golf clubs.
Those are good lessons learned, and 3 of them without a round in any chamber, and thankfully everything's been very safe.
And so you've the learning the lessons from those are, you modified your loading to where you make power factor now.
Well, you need to label your ammunition so you know what you're grabbing off the shelf. And 124 grain bullets sometimes weigh 123.8 grains.
Oh, I gotcha.
And there's a big difference between 3.7 and 3.8 grains of powder sometimes. And that's more of a sportsmanship rule, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So not only the rules are there to modify behavior, but they're to encourage good sportsmanship.
Sure.
And there's a line there between gaming something and being a good sportsman. And I've always appreciated that the level of sportsmanship in 3-gun is as high as any sport I've been a participant in. I think it's a very high level of sportsmanship. And having the ROs there where they they're supposed to, but they'll call you on something if it's not sportsmanlike.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that means you're not resetting or, maybe you're setting the target a little light or something like that. We can't have that. It's got to be done in a very competitive and ethical manner.
So then for your second one, you've learned to use the safety area at USPSA matches.
Well, a wagon is not a bag.
A wagon is not a bag.
Yeah.
And then the third one is...
And if you think somebody is not watching from 500 yards away and the match is over, you're wrong. It didn't even occur to me. I got to be frank with you. I didn't think I was breaking any rule at the time.
Sure.
But I'm never once going to complain or regret any RO giving me any sort of good advice that's going to lead to us being safer with a better sportsmanlike manner in every single instance. That's part of being in the sport. If you can't do that, you shouldn't be participating.
All right. And then your final one is just a better attention to dumping that shotgun and making sure it's all the way in the barrel.
Yeah. And I've seen probably as many DQs with shotguns as anything. Well, I shouldn't say that. Back when you would get DQ'd for having a hot pistol dumped, that happened pretty often.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with the shotgun is it's darn long. And so it's a little more difficult to manipulate and dismount from than a pistol or a rifle. And a lot of times those suckers will, like a basketball shot, kind of go all the way around the rim when you're dropping it. And so I know people that just shoot it empty because it's faster.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put the safety on, even if it's empty. I think it's probably a quarter of a second. But if it's not empty and it's hot, that's a bad deal. But above all else, it's an unsafe act. So there are times when even if it's a quarter of a second faster, and that might mean the difference between 2 or 3 places and finish sometimes, I still put the safety on every single time.
Yeah, and I think that's good advice, and most people
Yep.
That are serious about it and think about it would do the same.
Do you drop your rifle mag and rack out the round? Not usually.
No.
That safety seems to be a little bit more consistent to manipulate. It's either all the way off or all the way on.
Right.
And I don't think I've ever seen a rifle come out of a dump barrel, maybe once, because the mag caught on it. And then pistols, if there's enough time, if there's 2 steps or more, I see a lot of people drop the mag and rack it out. And of course, with the Glock, things like that, it's a safe trigger, so they just drop it. But I think it's personal preference as long as it's in the rule book. But if I have a chance to put on a safety, I'll do it.
Very good. Very good. Jason, where do you see the sport of 3-gun headed?
Well, of course, there's the legislative risk, which we're all very familiar with. It'll go the farthest, in my opinion, if we can establish and continue to promote this mentoring attitude that we have in the shooting sports, not just 3-gun. And so, as much as we can invest in the people who are interested in it, as much as we can be inclusive too. Somebody comes to watch a match, even at our local match, there's a couple of guys that just kind of appear. No one in my squad's going to say, hey, why don't you reset, if I'm over there welcoming those people and answering any questions they have and thanking them for coming. Mm-hmm. I think that's really critical. And then letting people know that you're in this sport is important as well to grow the sport. Yeah, for a long time there, it became a 3-gunner. I wasn't sure how people were going to react when I tell them I'm running with an AR-15 and shooting on the clock and being competitive with it. And there was a certain point where, especially with Facebook and things like that, that you start sharing the story with other people and you let them know that you compete.
Mm-hmm.
And they start associating high-quality people with this sport. And I think that's critical to the future of 3-gun as well.
Excellent point. I like the message of high quality people being in the sport.
Sure.
Because one of my beliefs is that if people that are fence sitters are going to a poll mm-hmm. and they're asked, are gun owners crazy? And they're going to think of everyone they know that is a gun owner or that does compete in a sport or that mm-hmm. and they're going to, if you are acting crazy and you are like shooting off at the mouth and stuff like that all the time, shouting my rats and everything, mm-hmm. then they're going to write you off at the polls. But if you're just a rational, reasonable human being with strong arguments and demonstrate safety and everything like we do in our sport, then they're going to have a different thought on the at the polls.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's my thought. Well, Jason, last question. If you could leave the audience with just one thought or one piece of advice, what would it be?
You've asked this, 100 times now? How many shows have you done?
93. Got a couple that have never seen the light of day.
Okay. So you've had 92 answers, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the good ones are taken. One piece of advice.
It doesn't have to be original. I didn't ask for an original thought.
I would say keep humanity part of the sport. Part of our culture sometimes is a defensive nature. Whether it's the concealed carry and things like that we have in our gun culture, our sporting culture, our defensive culture. And the reactions in today's world are so different than we grew up, Dave.
Yeah, no kidding.
20 years ago, and it was not that long ago, where I always thought that the police in our country was going to protect me. And I think a lot of people have kind of lost that sense of security, which is really unfortunate. But at the same time, I'd always want to keep one foot in my faith tradition of being a forgiving person, not being a judging person, not condemning people. I think the question was, how many times should I forgive one who sins against me? As many as 7 times as sinned against me. And the answer was, forgive even if there have been 77 sins against you. So having that sense of humanity and in touch with the good spirit that's in every single person on this planet, and to have that genuine concern and care for those people, and whatever your style is, however you do that, keeping that humanity central to how we live our lives, how we compete, how we treat people. I think that's the one piece of advice that I would give somebody on the range or off the range, is not to lose touch of that in some manner.
Excellent. Well, Jason, that's a great final thought, and I thank you for sharing that with us. And thank you for the awesome couple weeks I spent here in Omaha and teaching me so many great things and taking me to the range, taking me pheasant hunting. And I do appreciate you, and thank you very much for being on the 3-Gun Show.
Dave, what you're doing here is something very unique, and it required some initiative, and you've taken some real chances. And I suggest that as you look back on this time, it'll be one of those things you're very proud of. And we're very proud to have you in our community. And also, when you're an old timer and you look back on all the things you did, you'll know that you did something exceptional. And this is one of those things. And so any way we can all encourage you to keep doing this, please do. And when you're done, you'll be done, and we'll be fine with that too. But in the meantime, we just love it. So thank you for all your time, energy, and effort in what you do.
Well, thanks, man. I will definitely be keeping it going.
Yeah, man. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming to Omaha.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with Jason Hince. Jason is a cool dude, and I'm lucky enough to have become friends with him after exchanging emails and hanging out at matches over the last year. After multiple trips to the range over the last couple weeks, it is easy to see that Jason is serious about the sport, so it will be interesting to see where he takes it over the next couple years. Again, I'll have links to everything that we talked about at 3gunshow.com/episode 93. If you want to support the 3-Gun Show podcast, you can do so by using our affiliate link when you shop at Brownells. Just go to 3gunshow.com/Brownells and shop like normal. We earn a small commission on what you buy at no additional cost to you, and helps to keep the lights on. If you like the 3-Gun Show, please tell a friend about the podcast. If you see a new shooter at your local match, tell them too. You'll be their hero for sharing this resource. Let's grow this thing, and let's do it together. Show someone how to subscribe in iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, etc., and how to leave a review. Now, we just crossed 200,000 downloads last week. 200,000 downloads. That's like 200,000 hours of people listening to the show. So I'm ever so grateful for you listening to that. And thank you so much for making that possible. It's you, the listener, is the reason I do this. And yeah, I'm grateful. So thank you. I'm Dave Hartman, and I'll catch you in the next episode.
If you are finished, unload, show clear.